There is a grand betrayal again in the Z channels. They considered the Russian response to the SBU special operation Spiderweb too weak and unimpressive. In response to the destruction of its own strategic aviation, Russia has traditionally attacked peaceful Ukrainians. More than 400 shaheeds and dozens of missiles hit multi-story buildings and critical infrastructure of Ukraine on the night of June the 6th. In general, the aggressor did the same as response to the Spiderweb operation. Z channels expecting from the Kremlin at least Oreshnik, at most a nuclear strike, were greatly disappointed. The reaction of the famous Z-blogger Fighterbomber was indicative. He burst into a stream of obscene language and demanded that the Kremlin demolish Ukrainian cities with nuclear weapons. I wrote 6 sheets of text based on our responses, but I erased them all. I decided to write a shorter one. If today's strike was our response to the destruction of strategists, then it turned out to be nothing. We need to hit with nuclear weapons, wiping out the enemy's cities one by one, while we are still able to do this. Or at least ban the wording, "This is our response," wrote the angry propagandist. Angry patriot Maxim Kalashnikov called the response toothless. It seems like they answered for the web, once again throwing away long-range, high-precision to the wind. The elite and the centers of political, administrative and military control remained unaffected. If he were Beria, he would have interrogated Gerasimov long ago. This year, the Russian Federation is getting another prospect of strategic defeat in the form of an economic collapse if the war drags on, waged in such a strange way, by the way. They write to me from Kursk. The advance of our troops in the Sumy region is going with difficulty. Vicious positional battles, very heavy losses. Again, no isolation of the combat zone from the air, wrote Z-blogger. Pro-Kremlin Z-blogger Roman Alekhine tried to justify the weakness of the strike. The response will definitely be larger and more dramatic, the propagandist insisted. At the same time, he contradicted the official statement of the Russian Defense Ministry, which called the massive strike on Ukraine a response. One of the most influential Z-bloggers, Yuri Podolyaka, could not hide his disappointment. In principle, nothing out of the ordinary either. Even the number of UAVs used was not a record, he wrote. The author of the blog ZHIVOV Z, Alexey Zhivov, was also not impressed and expressed hope that the incinerating blow of retribution is yet to come. Even VGTRK employee Alexander Sladkov, who usually did not skimp on bellicose statements, expressed bewilderment about the tactics. We do not use sabotage methods against military and industrial facilities, and I don't know why. I also don't understand. Maybe there is an explanation for this, but I'm just not familiar with it. Why we don't shut down the entire energy system of Ukraine at once. The disappointment of Z-bloggers is explained by a recent series of very painful strikes on Russian territory.
Ukraine's security service, known as SBU, has released a new exclusive video from its Spiderweb special operation that destroyed dozens of Russian bombers with FPV drones last week. The fresh footage shows the full path of one of the SBU's FPV drones from the moment it took off from the roof of a modular home until it hit the Russian Tu-22M3 strategic bomber at the Beria airfield. In particular, the video shows how the drone flies a considerable distance and unhindered enters the territory of the airfield, from which smoke from previously hit aircraft is already rising. The security service struck Alenia, Ivanova, Dyagilevo, and Beria military airfields deep in Russia last Sunday, destroying over 40 strategic bombers, including AD-50, Tu-95, Tu-22, Tu-160 aircraft used in Russia's long-range attacks on Ukraine. The FPV drones used in the attacks had been smuggled to Russia and hidden in makeshift wooden houses placed on trucks. Later, the roofs of the wooden houses were opened and the drones were diverted to designated Russian targets via remote control. The operation that involved the use of artificial intelligence had been in preparation for a year and a half and destroyed Russian aircraft worth $7 billion. The operation was supervised by the head of the SBU, Vasyl Malyuk, and upon the instructions of Ukrainian President, Supreme Commander-in-Chief Volodymyr Zelensky. Total losses of enemy aircraft amount to 41 units, including A-50, Tu-95, Tu-22, Tu-160 and An-12 and Il-78 aircraft.
The Ukrainian Special Services blowing up the underwater part of the Crimean Bridge was carried out despite the impossibility of such an operation due to the density of the illegal structure's protection, recalls the American spy thriller Mission Impossible, in which, despite any obstacles, the hero carries out the most difficult tasks. This was stated on air by the spokesman for the Ukrainian Navy, Dmitry Pletenchuk. He explained that the bridge was very tightly protected, but they managed to bypass the FSB, police, etc., and install explosives in the appropriate place. This is from the category of Mission Impossible. But it did so without Tom Cruise. Even if it happened underwater, it is fantastic. Because, let me remind you, the Russians have been sinking a bunch of different structures around the bridge for years, precisely in order to make such operations as difficult as possible. However, in fact, we see that this did not lead to success. Pletenchuk emphasized. According to him, it is not yet known how exactly the bridge is being used. The information is being checked. In any case, it is quite risky to operate it after such an event, at least without inspections. As Pletenchuk explained, one way or another, the structure was damaged. And if the leadership of occupied Crimea decided to risk the lives of their fellow citizens by allowing them to travel as before, then it is likely that someone from the occupiers will be held responsible for these victims in the future. The military man emphasized. He added that after the previous 2 defeats of the bridge, the occupiers failed to fully repair its railway section. Only the section for motor vehicles was fully operational. As Pletenchuk noted, the Russians understood this problem, so they invested in the construction of a railway leading from the Russian Federation to the occupied peninsula. It is this railway line leading to the ARC from the Russian Rostov-on-Don that the invaders rely on in the event of the destruction of the Kursk bridge. The representative of the Ukrainian Navy added that, as there is one submarine missile carrier at sea, the airspace is very saturated with enemy aircraft, from helicopters to drones and operational tactical aircraft. At the same time, he added that previously, the enemy used aviation to carry out attacks from the sea, but after Operation Spiderweb, during which Russian airfields were attacked, it is difficult to say anything. We are monitoring. We see the situation and are ready to react if something happens. I cannot yet confirm that there are any changes now or that any preparations for massive attacks using sea platforms are noticeable. Pletenchuk added, he does not rule out that the situation with combined attacks on Ukraine may change now. But for now, the occupiers have everything they have available flying over the sea.